Okay, let's unpack this because it's going to mess with your head a little bit.
Right?
What if I told you that everything you're seeing right now in this very moment is actually from 15 seconds in the past? It sounds wildly counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It really does.
But according to some really fascinating research highlighted by Popular Mechanics, our brain's visual processing isn't instant. It has a built-in delay.
Right. It's like your brain is acting as a sophisticated editor, kind of smoothing out reality for us.
Yeah, making the world feel stable and coherent instead of a chaotic, flickering mess of constant new inputs.
Exactly. It's a remarkable feat of neural engineering, really, ensuring our perceived reality is consistently manageable.
It genuinely is a mind-bending concept, showing just how incredible the brain is at constructing our reality.
And what's even more incredible, sort of tying into this whole idea of perception and time, is that theoretical physicists are now trying to measure something even more abstract. Imaginary time.
Imaginary time. Okay, that sounds, well, imaginary.
Well, yeah, but Stephen Hawking first introduced it not as science fiction, but as a mathematical construct. To describe quantum mechanics and a universe without singularities, those points where the equations just break down.
Oh, okay. So it was a tool.
Essentially, yes. It allowed physicists to use real numbers for certain calculations that would otherwise involve imaginary numbers, making these incredibly complex quantum equations solvable. But now, researchers are suggesting it might not just be a mathematical tool.
You mean it could be real, physically real?
That's the suggestion. Something with physical implications that might actually be observed and measured. It really makes you question what we perceive as real time.
Wow.
And how profoundly complex our universe and our interaction with it truly is. It's a testament to the fact that even our most fundamental assumptions about reality are constantly being challenged at the edges of science.
And that idea of delayed perception, of things being far more intricate, more nuanced than they initially appear. Well, it's a surprisingly fitting frame for our deep dive today. Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is your shortcut to being truly well-informed, packed with surprising facts, and hopefully just enough humor to keep you absolutely hooked.
Our mission, as always, is to take a vast stack of global news, a mix of articles, research, our own notes, and pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge or insight for you, our listener.
Yep. Today, we're plunging into the truly current events. We're peeling back the layers on high-stakes geopolitical maneuvering, seismic economic shifts, groundbreaking science, and those deeply human stories unfolding behind the headlines.
And we aim to explain the news of the day clearly, journalistically, for a global audience, presenting multiple perspectives without taking sides ourselves.
We've synthesized a rich tapestry of information today from a whole range of sources, major international news outlets like RT, Al Jazeera, BBC, DW, plus more specialized ones like NASA, Popular Mechanics, TechCrunch, and a lot more.
Our goal is really to connect the dots for you, to help you understand the broader context and the underlying currents of what's happening around the world, making sense of it all.
Okay, let's jump straight onto the geopolitical chessboard. The stakes couldn't be higher right now. We should probably start with that significant diplomatic exchange that's been making waves. The latest phone call between Russian President Vladimir Putin and former U.S. President Donald Trump.
Right, and this wasn't just a quick check-in. It marked their 6th phone call since Trump returned to the White House in January 2025.
6th, okay.
And it lasted for nearly an hour, according to a senior Kremlin aide, Yuri Ushakov.
An hour? That's a substantial amount of time for leaders to be on the line.
It really is. And the core of their discussion, as widely reported, centered mainly on the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, specifically exploring diplomatic solutions and reviewing the outcomes of recent talks between Moscow and Kyiv, the ones held in Istanbul.
But it wasn't just Ukraine, was it?
No, definitely not. They also delved into the escalating tensions between Israel and Iran, developments in Syria, and the broader Middle East situation, which, as we'll see, connects to so many other global dynamics. Intriguingly, there was also talk of cooperation in areas like energy and even space exploration.
Really? Space?
Yeah, hinting at broader strategic interests that go beyond just the immediate conflicts. And in a rather unique diplomatic gesture, Putin extended Independence Day wishes to Trump, drawing this historical parallel to Russian support during the American Revolution.
Huh. That's a specific reference. A subtle nod, maybe.
Perhaps. A nod to historical alignment, you could say. Interesting phrasing, at least.
Now, when we look at the differing perspectives from that call, it really starts to get interesting, doesn't it? Because the public messages don't always seem to line up perfectly.
That's true.
Trump, on his side, urged for a cessation of hostilities in Ukraine. Standard enough. But then later, in what seemed like an admission to Axios and RT, he acknowledged that no substantial progress was actually made on a ceasefire. And he openly admitted that his earlier public claims about ending the conflict swiftly were perhaps exaggerated.
Which is quite a candid admission from a former president.
Very candid. What do you make of that shift in tone? Is it just managing expectations?
It could be seen that way. It certainly signals a more pragmatic acknowledgement of the complexities involved, moving beyond just campaign rhetoric, perhaps. On the other side, Putin reportedly maintained Russia's commitment to finding a peaceful resolution. But, and this is key, he simultaneously emphasized addressing what Moscow consistently refers to as the conflict's underlying causes.
Okay.
And he reiterated that Russia wouldn't retreat from its strategic goals. So that gives us a clear sense of Moscow's pretty firm stance in these talks.
So while both sides are talking peace, their definitions, their preconditions, they still seem pretty far apart.
Very divergent, yeah.
Okay, so here's where those high-level calls really hit the ground,
Yeah.
right? Directly impacting the lifeblood of the conflict.
And
Military aid.
Exactly.
While the leaders talk, the immediate reality for Ukraine seems to have been a dramatic shift in support. We've seen significant reports citing Ukrainian officials stating the U.S. has actually suspended all military aid to Ukraine.
That includes crucial items like Patriot and Hellfire missiles, GMLRS rockets, 155mm artillery shells, the works.
And this suspension reportedly followed an internal review of U.S. weapons reserves, aimed at prioritizing domestic readiness.
That's the official line, yes.
So from your perspective, how do allies like Ukraine and maybe other nations relying on U.S. support, how do they interpret these mixed signals, and what's the biggest fallout we've seen so far?
Well, that's a crucial question because the Ukrainian response has been one of pretty clear discontent. It creates a significant trust deficit, you see. A Ukrainian MP, Mariana Beziglaya, asserted that the U.S. is no longer a reliable ally. That really highlights the profound sense of abandonment felt in Kyiv. The stated U.S. rationale, according to the White House, was prioritizing U.S. national interests, maintaining sufficient stockpiles. Standard stuff. However, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov offered a different speculation. He suggested resources might have been diverted to support Israel in its standoff with Iran.
So linking it to the Middle East tensions.
Exactly. And from Moscow's perspective, naturally, this reduced Western support brings their special military operation, as they call it, closer to conclusion. It reinforces their narrative. This whole situation really puts a spotlight on the shifting geopolitical priorities for the U.S. under the current administration.
And Trump himself weighed in, didn't he? Kind of muddying the waters further.
He did. He denied a complete halt, asserting the U.S. is still supplying weapons.
Okay.
Yet at the same time, he criticized the previous administration for overextending by depleting U.S. stockpiles. And he confirmed that his own administration hasn't approved any new aid packages to Ukraine since taking office.
Right. So it creates this really complicated, arguably contradictory picture of what aid actually means right now. What does that conflicting info tell us about the real state of play for nations relying on the U.S.?
It tells us that for nations like Ukraine, the immediate reality is profound uncertainty about future support. Simple as that. Beyond that, we're seeing other allies, like Germany, taking proactive, even secret steps.
Secret steps.
Reportedly, yes. Germany is apparently seeking a secret agreement with the U.S. to purchase 2 Patriot air defense systems with the intention of transferring them to Ukraine. This reflects a deep fear in Berlin that the U.S. policy shift might extend to their own requests for critical defense systems.
So they're trying to get ahead of it, secure supplies through other channels.
Precisely. It's a clear indicator of a significant trust deficit forming among traditional allies and a scramble to adapt to perceived shifts in U.S. foreign policy.
And while these high-level political shifts are unfolding, the realities on the ground remain brutal.
Absolutely.
Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, experienced a massive wave of Russian missile and drone strikes just recently, on July 4th.
Yeah, that was widely reported. Local officials, including Mayor Klitschko, confirmed at least 13 strikes across multiple districts.
Mostly non-residential facilities, but still 14 people injured. And Zuliani International Airport, a key infrastructure target near Kyiv, was apparently a focal point.
And the numbers from Ukraine's Air Force were huge, claiming Russia fired anywhere from 537 to 550 drones and 11 to 60 missiles in that barrage. It just underscores the sheer intensity.
And Ukraine struck back too, right?
Simultaneously, yes. Ukrainian drone raids targeted several regions in Russia. In the Rostov region, which is a large area in southern Russia bordering Ukraine, specifically the village of Dolotinka, a drone hit an apartment building causing a partial collapse. Tragically, a retired female teacher was killed.
Oh, awful.
And in the Moscow region, the big area around the capital in the Sergei-Posadsky district, 4 drones crashed, injuring 2 men and damaging a power substation, causing some outages.
So these attacks are widespread, hitting both sides.
Yes, and Russian air defenses reported intercepting 48 drones across 5 different regions in western Russia, near the border, Rostov, Kursk, Belgorod, Oryol, and Lipetsk. It really highlights the widespread and, increasingly, the symmetric nature of the conflict.
What's really striking, though, following these intense military actions and the aid discussions, is this notable shift in Ukrainian rhetoric we're hearing.
That's right. Kirill Budanov, Ukraine's military intelligence chief, acknowledged that Ukrainian forces are unlikely to push Russian troops back.
It's a big admission.
A huge one. And he said that peace talks are the only realistic path to change. President Zelensky now also admits a military victory is unachievable and is calling on Western allies to increase sanctions on Russia to force diplomatic concessions.
That's a massive departure from his stance back in 2022 when he rejected peace deals.
A very significant shift. It potentially marks a turning point, perhaps influenced by the aid freeze and the hard military realities on the ground.
So what does this all mean then? Beyond the shift in rhetoric in Ukraine, which seems a clear response to the aid situation and the grind of the war.
Well, it suggests we're seeing a critical turning point. It shows that even the most resolute stances can be reshaped by the practical realities of, resource dependency and military attrition.
Right.
It could usher in a new, perhaps more pragmatic phase of the conflict.
And it puts pressure on European allies too, presumably, to step up.
Absolutely. It highlights the fragility of long-standing alliances when national interests start to diverge, especially with what seems like a U.S. pivot towards the Middle East.
Exactly. Which brings us neatly to that broader geopolitical canvas, connecting directly to the persistent tensions in the Middle East. Let's pivot to those regional flashpoints and diplomatic maneuvers.
Okay. The recent 12-day war between Iran and Israel, for example, that marked a pivotal shift in Tehran's foreign policy. It seems to have fostered deep distrust of the West, especially due to former President Trump's contradictory statements, as one report put it.
So Iran's looking inwards now, focusing on military and economy.
It appears so. Focusing on military modernization and economic resilience, moving away from what they perhaps see as unreliable diplomatic paths, strengthening their internal capabilities.
And in the immediate aftermath of that 12-day war ceasefire, the U.S. imposed sanctions on Iran.
A first wave, yes, aiming to curb its regional influence and nuclear program. At the same time, efforts for a Gaza ceasefire are intensifying. Hamas is actively pushing for guarantees amidst really escalating casualties.
And President Trump announced Israel accepted a 60-day Gaza ceasefire deal. Those specifics are still vague.
That's what was announced, yes, though details haven't been widely shared yet. These parallel developments just underscore the complexity of diplomatic efforts in that region.
And the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, which is that densely populated Palestinian territory on the Mediterranean coast. It's just staggering.
It really is. The UN reported a horrific 613 killings just at aid distribution sites and near humanitarian convoys.
Good grief.
Al Jazeera and the BBC detailed horrifying accounts, a Gaza aid contractor witnessing colleagues firing on hungry Palestinians.
Firing on them.
That's the report. And disturbingly, Israeli army officers have even admitted to shelling hungry civilians at Gaza aid points.
Admitted it.
Yes. This is a critical human rights concern demanding immediate global attention and thorough investigations. It paints a truly dire picture of the civilian toll.
And beyond Gaza, the region is seeing wider repercussions, right? Continued volatility.
Definitely. An Israeli drone attack near Beirut, the capital of Lebanon on the Mediterranean coast, specifically in the Khalda area about 12 kilometers south of the city, on a busy motorway killed at least 1 and injured 3 others.
So the conflict's ripples are spreading.
It demonstrates exactly that, spreading beyond the immediate war zones, threatening broader regional stability.
And then there are these annexation calls, which could dramatically reshape the whole landscape.
Yes, a group of 15 Israeli cabinet ministers and the Knesset speaker urged Prime Minister Netanyahu to annex the West Bank. That's the landlocked territory forming the bulk of the Palestinian territories.
And their justification is?
They cite the 2023 Hamas attack as evidence of dangers from a potential Palestinian state. And they see the current geopolitical climate, including what they perceive as strong U.S. support under Trump, as a strategic opportunity for Israel to assert sovereignty.
And Finance Minister Smotrich supports immediate implementation if ordered.
Correct. But this is hugely contentious. Critics like Saudi Arabia and Egypt condemn the move, noting the West Bank was captured in 1967 and settlements are widely viewed as illegal under international law.
What would be the immediate and long-term significance if that actually happened?
Well, immediately, you'd likely see a massive increase in regional instability. It could collapse any remaining prospects for a two-state solution, which is still the internationally recognized framework for peace.
And long-term?
Long-term, it would probably deepen Palestinian resentment and could isolate Israel further on the global stage, regardless of any perceived U.S. support at the moment. Although, interestingly, recent discussions have emerged about Trump potentially playing a role in repairing Israeli ties with Lebanon and Syria. So even amidst these tensions, back-channel diplomacy seems active.
And there's an upcoming meeting between Netanyahu and Trump expected too.
Yes, expected to discuss Gaza ceasefire negotiations and a potential hostage deal. It really underscores Trump's continued influence in regional affairs.
There's also this complex ethical question bubbling up about corporate accountability.
That's right. A UN expert raised concerns about tech firms potentially profiting from Israel's genocide, sparking debates on ethical business practices in conflict zones.
And that connects to the UK-based group, Palestine Action. They're known for direct action protests against companies they accuse of profiting from the conflict.
And they're now facing a potential ban under terrorism laws.
Which raises fundamental questions about free speech, the right to protest, versus national security. A really tricky balance.
It really highlights that tension between national security concerns and civil liberties, a debate playing out in many countries right now.
What's truly fascinating here, though, is how these intense international political currents connect right back to domestic policies, legal frameworks, even how we define protest and migration.
Exactly. Which brings us to other key global political developments that are reshaping international relations.
Absolutely. And one really breaking piece of news with potentially huge diplomatic fallout is Russia formally recognizing the Taliban government in Afghanistan.
Afghanistan, the country at the crossroads of Central and South Asia.
Right. And this makes Russia the first major global power to do so since August 2021.
It's a huge step, following Russia's Supreme Court removing the Taliban from its list of terrorist organizations back in April. A very calculated move.
What are the implications?
They're significant. The Taliban flag is already flying over the Afghan embassy in Moscow. Russia is positioning this as a full-fledged partnership, aiming for deeper economic and security ties. And other Central Asian nations, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, they've also strengthened ties, often due to shared borders and security concerns.
And the Afghan ambassador to Qatar hailed the move.
Yes, encouraging other countries to follow suit. It represents a major shift in international diplomatic recognition and could really alter regional power dynamics.
And this diplomatic recognition then feeds into those sensitive migration discussions we mentioned.
It does. Germany, for instance, aims to establish direct communication with the Taliban to negotiate deportation agreements for Afghan refugees, trying to streamline the return of asylum seekers.
And in Europe, generally, we're seeing a broader crackdown on immigration.
Yes. The Dutch parliament in the Netherlands in northwestern Europe passed a pair of bills tightening rules on asylum seekers wishing to settle there. It reflects a growing trend across Europe to manage and often restrict migration flows.
Concerns about immigration oversight aren't just in Europe either. In the UK, off the northwest coast of mainland Europe.
Right. MPs there are highlighting that the UK Home Office is apparently unaware if foreign workers leave after visas end, raising concerns about visa overstays and monitoring. It speaks to the broader challenge of tracking and enforcing immigration policies.
Shifting gears a bit to legal battles with political undertones. There's a jailed Russian-Armenian businessman, Semvel Karapetyan.
Yes, he's filed defamation lawsuits against 2 Armenian MPs.
Armenia, the country in the South Caucasus region of Eurasia.
Correct. He accuses them of alleging he has ties to Russia's FSB, their security service, and inciting a coup. This comes amidst broader political and social unrest in Armenia, particularly around controversial plans to cede border villages to Azerbaijan, another country in the region. This lawsuit really highlights the fragility of political stability there.
Meanwhile, Russia is also strengthening ties with African nations as part of a broader push for global influence.
Exactly. The island nation of São Tomé and Príncipe off the west coast of Central Africa in the Gulf of Guinea.
Right.
They're deepening bilateral cooperation with Russia across various sectors: military, technical, agriculture, scientific research. This includes Russia gaining access to Sao Tome's Atlantic naval port and collaboration on military education and anti-piracy efforts.
So another example of African nations diversifying partnerships beyond traditional Western allies.
It reflects that trend, yes, looking to partners like Russia for security and economic help.
Then there was that incredibly rare defection between the Koreas.
Yes, a North Korean man actually crossed the heavily fortified demilitarized zone, the DMZ buffer strip, into South Korea.
Directly across. That's unusual.
Highly unusual. South Korean soldiers even fired warning shots at North Korean troops who crossed the military demarcation line. It highlights significant security vulnerabilities along one of the world's most heavily guarded borders, and also the desperation faced by defectors.
Elsewhere, in West Africa, recent protests in Togo.
Togo, a country in West Africa. The protests reflect deep-seated anger among the youth towards the 58-year dynastic rule there, which has led to impoverishment and suppression. It's a story of long-simmering discontent boiling over.
And on the global trade front, Brussels, the EU capital, and Berlin, Germany's capital, they're launching a new initiative.
Yes, trying to bypass the long-standing paralysis of the World Trade Organization, the WTO. They attribute that paralysis mainly to the United States.
So they're trying to reform trade outside the existing structures.
It signals a strong desire for reform and a willingness to act outside those gridlocked institutions.
Okay, let's quickly touch on UK party politics. BBC correspondents are assessing the Labour government's performance 1 year in.
And the assessment isn't glowing.
Well, Prime Minister Keir Starmer claims he's met every challenge, but the perception, according to the BBC, is that the situation looks bad right now, very bad. Highlights the immense pressure on new governments.
And there's a significant development on the left.
Yes. Zara Sultana, an MP, announced she's quitting the Labour Party to start a new political party, alongside the former Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn.
Corbyn confirmed discussions are ongoing.
He did. It signifies the emergence of alternative left-wing options, maybe a fragmentation of the traditional political spectrum there.
So we're seeing a lot of movement politically across the globe: diplomatic realignments, new parties, shifting migration policies.
And these profound political shifts don't happen in a vacuum, do they? They deeply impact the financial and economic currents.
Absolutely. Which, for many of us, is where these global forces really hit home. Let's dive into that next.
All right, let's navigate the intersection of policy, economy, and market dynamics, starting right here in the U.S. with President Trump's big legislative victory.
The one big, beautiful bill, as he calls it.
That's the one. The U.S. House of Representatives narrowly passed this sweeping tax and spending reform bill. It was a tight vote, 218 to 14, underscores the deep political divides.
It's undeniably a major policy achievement for the administration and congressional Republicans. Key elements include extending those Trump-era tax cuts, mainly benefiting corporations and high-income earners.
And there's some temporary relief for tips and overtime pay, aimed at consumers.
Yes, aimed at boosting consumer spending. And crucially, it injects hundreds of billions into military expansion and immigration enforcement plans, aligning with core tenets of Trump's platform: a clear prioritization of defense and border security.
But it's not without its highly controversial cuts and pretty significant fiscal implications, is it?
Far from it. The bill slashes funding for Medicaid by a massive $930 billion, plus substantial reductions to food aid and clean energy programs.
And the fiscal impact, the debt.
Huge. The Congressional Budget Office projects this law will add an astounding $3.3 trillion to the national debt over the next decade.
Wow. $3.3 trillion. How does that break down?
Well, it accounts for $4.5 trillion in revenue losses, mainly from the tax cuts, versus only $1.2 trillion in spending reductions. And it raises the federal debt ceiling by $5 trillion.
Talk about a fiscal impact that could redefine the nation's finances for years. What are the real-world consequences of cuts like that $930 billion from Medicaid?
But real-world consequences are significant, potentially stripping health care from millions of vulnerable Americans, impacting state budgets, putting immense strain on hospitals, and the long-term outlook for the national debt, with another $3.3 trillion projected, is a serious concern for economic stability and future generations.
Politically, though, the bill's passage cemented Trump's power, using charm and threats, as Reuters put it.
Reportedly, yes, showcasing his effective, if sometimes unorthodox, negotiation style. And healthcare concerns are already surfacing. MSNBC reported on a Maggio lawmaker pleading with his state's governor to protect hospitals from the budget proposal.
Highlighting potential repercussions right away.
Exactly, and this stands in stark contrast to the symbolic timing of Melania Trump's children's hospital photo op, amidst healthcare cuts that critics say rip healthcare for millions, as Yahoo News noted. A powerful visual juxtaposition there.
Okay, now let's zoom out from domestic policy to global economic interconnectedness. Because what happens in Washington definitely sends ripples across continents.
For sure. We're seeing some interesting currency shifts globally. The euro and other major currencies are strengthening against the U.S. dollar.
How much?
Since January 2025, the U.S. dollar has tumbled roughly 13% against the euro and over 8% against the Japanese yen.
Okay, that's quite a drop. What does that mean practically for international trade in different economies?
Well, it signals trouble for EU exporters. Their goods suddenly become more expensive, less competitive globally.
And U.S. imports get cheaper.
Correct. And for U.S. companies that have offshored operations, their overseas costs now translate to a higher dollar value, increasing their expenses.
And this currency shift is directly impacted by President Trump's reinstatement of those sweeping tariffs.
It certainly contributes. He plans a blanket 10% rate on all imports, with significantly higher rates, up to 70% targeted specifically at exports from China, Mexico, Canada, and the European Union.
Wow, 70%.
Potentially, yes. Notification letters have apparently been sent, with tariffs set to take effect August 1st for countries that fail to secure trade deals by a July 9th deadline.
That's a really tight timeline for major negotiations. Creates huge uncertainty for global supply chains.
Absolutely. The market reacted immediately, as you expect. Equity index futures dropped. The dollar weakened following the remarks.
And Asia-Pacific markets were mixed.
Yes. Traded mixed as investors braced for potential trade wars and their impact on corporate earnings. Negotiations between the U.S. and EU over these tariffs have reached crunch time, according to DW, with no deal in sight.
No deal.
Not yet. The EU is discussing a framework trade deal to try and avoid those hefty 50% tariffs, but their position seems weakened due to internal splits among member states. Makes a unified front challenging.
Highlights the difficult balancing act countries face, protecting domestic industries versus maintaining international trade.
Definitely. And beyond traditional trade, we're seeing strong demand for private markets. Yi-Sin Hung from State Street noted tremendous interest.
Meaning investors are looking beyond stocks and bonds.
Seems so. Perhaps seeking higher returns or less volatility in private equity, private debt, real estate infrastructure. In the renewables sector, Nextracker stock, a solo play, soared around 12% this week.
So renewables aren't dead despite headwinds.
Signals they may be down, but they're not out, as Investors Business Daily put it. Indicates renewed investor confidence in the long-term potential of green energy.
What about the startup world? Any interesting moves?
Yeah, a Y Combinator alum launched a new $34 million fund dedicated specifically to YC startups backed by Gary Tan. That's a big vote of confidence for early-stage innovation and that accelerator model.
And the electric vehicle market. Federal tax incentives are ending soon, right? September 30th.
That's right. Raises questions about consumer demand, but experts suggest significant benefits for EVs remain lower fuel costs, environmental benefits, etc. And one company, Slate Auto, an electric truck startup, aims to offer its vehicle under $20,000.
Under $20K.
By manufacturing in Indiana, the state in the Midwestern U.S., and using simpler battery technology even after the federal EV tax credit ends, could be a game changer for EV affordability.
The tech industry always has some buzz too, doesn't it? Sometimes controversial.
Always. There's been discussion around a serial moonlighter, Soham Parekh, a software engineer reportedly working at multiple Silicon Valley startups simultaneously.
At the same time, raises questions about ethics, loyalty.
Exactly. And the nature of employment in the modern gig economy. Meanwhile, another company, Cluely, saw its annual recurring revenue double in just a week to $7 million after launching a new enterprise product.
Doubled in a week. Impressive.
Very. Though its founder acknowledges rivals are coming, highlighting the rapid growth and intense competition in enterprise software. And for those looking to get into tech, TechCrunch Allstage is offering early launch prices again for their events and resources.
Okay, shifting focus globally now. India received a record amount in remittances, money sent home from its diaspora.
A record $135.46 billion during the 2024-25 fiscal year. That's a huge 14% increase from the previous year.
Wow. And that's a significant part of their economy.
Over 10% of the country's gross current account inflows, a really significant and stable source of external financing, shows the global reach of the India diaspora. The United States was the largest contributor, about 27.7%, followed by the UAE, UK, and Saudi Arabia. India is the world's top recipient of remittances overall.
But there's a potential snag from that U.S. Big Beautiful Bill, the 1% tax on overseas money transfers by non-citizens.
Yes, that could potentially impact future remittance flows, possibly reducing a vital source of income for many families in India. Something to watch.
And in Germany, the country in Central Europe, business leaders are worried about bringing back mandatory military conscription.
Yes, they fear it would drain an already struggling labor force and hinder economic growth. This comes as Chancellor Friedrich Merz considers the draft to boost military recruitment amidst broader EU militarization efforts. It highlights that tension between national security needs and economic realities.
So if we connect this all to the bigger picture, it's just so clear how these economic currents feed into broader societal issues, isn't it?
Absolutely. From global trade disputes and currency shifts to domestic policies like tax cuts and military spending.
The decisions made on the financial front have real-world consequences for individuals, communities.
They impact everything: cost of goods, healthcare availability, national defense strength, even the vitality of a country's labor force and its growth.
It's all interconnected. Understanding these links is really key to grasping the world around us.
That's a perfect segue into our next section, exploring that critical interplay of environment, public health, and the deeply human stories that often get lost in the fast news cycle. Let's start with a remarkable scientific advancement in environmental monitoring: NASA's TEMPO mission.
TEMPO, tropospheric emissions, monitoring of pollution. Launched in 2023, completed its initial phase, now extended until at least September 2026.
And this isn't just another satellite. It's the first to provide continuous hourly daylight air quality measurements across North America from geostationary orbit.
Meaning it hovers over the same spot, giving consistent, detailed data.
Exactly. It tracks crucial pollutants, nitrogen dioxide, formaldehyde, ozone, helps monitor everything from urban smog to wildfire smoke, industrial emissions.
And the best part? Data delivery time is down to under 3 hours, enabling quicker public health alerts.
A huge step for real-time environmental awareness. Immediate benefits for air quality management, allowing authorities to issue warnings much faster.
It truly is a leap forward for environmental intelligence.
But despite these monitoring advances, we still face significant environmental and public health challenges. A nationwide study in the Netherlands, for example, revealed something pretty disturbing.
What's that?
Every single individual tested had traces of forever chemicals, PFAS, in their bloodstream.
Every single one. What are PFAS again?
Per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances. Human-made chemicals used in countless products for water and grease repellency. Think non-stick pans, food packaging, firefighting foam.
And the levels were high.
Concentrations exceeded health safety thresholds in almost all cases. And these chemicals persist in the environment and in our bodies for an extremely long time.
Hence, forever chemicals.
Yeah.
And they're linked to health problems.
Yes, serious concerns like elevated cholesterol, infertility, certain cancers. Similar patterns are seen in the US, Canada, Australia. It's a global public health crisis needing urgent attention and regulation.
And as our digital lives expand, our environmental footprint grows too, sometimes in hidden ways.
Like data centers. Our huge appetite for data streaming, cloud computing, AI leads to a rapid increase in these facilities.
And they consume a lot of resources.
Significant amounts of water and electricity, mainly for cooling their vast servers. It's a silent but substantial drain on precious resources, raising questions about the sustainability of our digital future.
On the infrastructure front, Ethiopia, the country in the Horn of Africa, declared completion of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, the GERD.
Africa's largest hydroelectric power plant, under construction since 2011, expected to generate 5.15 gigawatts of electricity, a massive boost for Ethiopia's energy.
But it's caused regional tensions, right, with Egypt and Sudan downstream.
Long-standing tensions, yes. Those countries rely heavily on the Nile River and fear reduced water flows impacting agriculture. They've filed complaints with the UN Security Council.
Well, Ethiopia insists it's a shared opportunity for regional development.
That's their position. Finding a resolution balancing everyone's needs remains a huge diplomatic challenge.
Beyond these big projects, natural disasters continue hitting communities globally, seemingly more often and harder.
Absolutely. Right now, a tropical storm named Chantal is brewing, threatening the July 4th weekend in Florida, the state in the southeastern U.S., with strong winds, heavy rain.
And wildfires in Europe.
Yes, 1,000 firefighters tackling raging wildfires in eastern Germany, Gorschheide in Saxony, Saalfelder Höhe in Thuringia, two eastern German states following a severe heat wave. Wildfires are also forcing evacuations near Athens, Greece's capital, and on the Greek island of Crete. And sadly, at least 2 fatalities reported in Turkey, the country at the crossroads of Europe and Asia.
Heavy rains causing devastation too.
In India, monsoon rains in Himachal Pradesh, a state in northern India in the Himalayas, have resulted in at least 63 deaths due to flooding and landslides. Over 150 homes, 14 bridges destroyed. Search and rescue ongoing.
And a major blackout in the Czech Republic, Central Europe.
Yes, a substation failure caused widespread blackouts, including Prague and northern Czechia, disrupting public transport. Highlights infrastructure vulnerability.
Back in the U.S., fireworks caused a house fire in Los Angeles, California.
Exploding fireworks led to a fire burning 4 homes, a stark reminder about caution during celebrations.
And 5 years on, Japan is still mourning the victims of those heavy rains in Kumamoto Prefecture.
Yes. The July 2020 floods and mudslides that killed 67 people. The Japan Times highlighted the ongoing remembrance. It's a reminder of how interconnected our world is, not just politically, but environmentally.
These events aren't just headlines, are they? Their direct impacts on communities, lives, raises crucial questions about preparedness, resilience.
That's a crucial point. How do these global challenges, climate change, resource management, disasters, impact individual well-being and society? And how are societies adapting?
Let's delve into that public health and social well-being. In Germany, there's strong public support for stricter teenage drinking rules.
Yes, a majority, over half in a survey, favor raising the legal age for buying beer and wine from 16 to 18. Shows clear public sentiment towards youth health.
And in the UK, the Prime Minister's plan for the National Health Service, the NHS, transforming it from a sickness service to a health service.
That's the aim, focusing on significant improvements in preventative care, overall public wellness, a fundamental shift in healthcare philosophy, prioritizing well-being over just treating illness.
On a more difficult note, content moderators for big tech companies, they're uniting.
Yes, to tackle the emotional toll and mental trauma from their roles. Many report toxic health effects from constantly dealing with distressing, disturbing material.
It's a hidden cost of our digital world, isn't it? The human price paid by those on the front lines.
Absolutely. Raises big questions about corporate responsibility and mental health support for these crucial, yet often unseen workers.
There's also a fascinating public health initiative involving sterilized flies.
Screwworm flies, yes. U.S. authorities are preparing to release billions of sterilized ones over southern Texas, the state in the southern central U.S., and Mexico, the country south of the U.S.
To eradicate a dangerous parasite.
Exactly, one that preys on livestock and humans. The method uses radiation to sterilize male flies so they can't reproduce. It's praised as effective and environmentally safer than pesticides. Scientific innovation tackling a persistent threat.
Then there's the heartbreaking reality of organ trafficking. Al Jazeera highlighted a village of 1 kidney on the India-Bangladesh border.
A grim testament to exploitation. Shows how traffickers exploit desperate poverty through loopholes and fraud, luring vulnerable people into selling their organs. Illustrates how economic desperation is preyed upon, leading to severe human rights abuses.
From these really serious societal concerns, let's transition now to the perhaps lighter yet still impactful world of culture and sports. Offers a different lens on the human experience.
Okay, let's shift gears and unpack some truly cosmic wonders, plus the latest in Martian exploration. First up, this mind-blowing discovery nicknamed the planetary carousel.
Planetary carousel, what's that?
It comes from reanalyzing data from NASA's Kepler Space Telescope, the one designed to find exoplanets. They found 2 planets, KOI 134b and C, with highly unusual orbital dynamics.
Unusual.
Well, KOI 134b is a warm Jupiter-sized planet, and C is smaller, Saturn-sized. What's astonishing is they orbit on different planes tilted 15 degrees relative to each other.
Tilted, like not orbiting flat.
Exactly. And they have a precise 2.1 orbital resonance. The inner one orbits twice for every one orbit of the outer one. This makes it the first known compact multiplanetary system showing such significant transit timing variations, or TTVs.
The TTVs, those small changes in when a planet crosses its star.
Right, often caused by gravitational tugs or weird orbits like this. And it's the first seen with this kind of orbital tilting as well. a complex gravitational dance far beyond our solar system, shows how re-examining old data yields new breakthroughs.
Amazing. And speaking of celestial beauty, Hubble captioned a new image.
A truly breathtaking, detailed image of globular cluster ESO 59112, also known as Palomar 8, reveals a dazzling array of multicolored stars.
Globular clusters, those ancient spherical collections of stars.
Precisely. Tightly bounded by gravity. This observation is part of the Hubble Missing Globular Cluster Survey, aimed at understanding the Milky Way's early formation, like looking back to our galaxy's infancy.
And bringing it closer to home, something on Mars, from Perseverance.
Yes, the rover captured an image showing a small American flag mounted on an aluminum plate at the base of its mast, taken on June 28th.
A flag on Mars.
The Watson camera highlighted red Martian dust clinging to it, a unique blend of terrestrial symbolism and the extraterrestrial environment. The rover's continuing its mission, searching for signs of past microbial life, collecting geological data, extending humanity's reach to the red planet.
And back here on Earth, pieces of an asteroid might have landed in Scotland.
Experts suggest fragments of a small asteroid, which caused a luminous display over parts of the UK, may have landed in the West Highlands of Scotland, possibly near Ben Nevis, the highest mountain there.
Witnesses reported an orange glow and a loud sound.
Imagine that pieces of space, rock possibly lying undiscovered in the rugged highlands. A tangible link between us and the cosmos.
Okay, let's unpack this further. Let's transition from the cosmos back to how our own brains interpret reality. We started this deep dive talking about that popular mechanics research, our visual perception being delayed by up to 15 seconds.
Yes, that stunning idea that the reality we think we're seeing in real time is actually a buffered, smoothed out version.
Our brain is literally creating a more stable, less chaotic world for us by actively editing the incoming visual data.
Understanding these implications for the mind-body connection could have profound applications, couldn't it? Maybe in VR development, making experiences feel more seamless.
Or even in treating visual processing disorders. It truly makes you wonder about the immediate nature of our reality. How much is an active construction by our own minds? It's a remarkable illusion.
It absolutely is. And speaking of stimulating the brain, Popular Mechanics also featured that challenging brain teaser, the 4 Knights chess puzzle.
Yes, placing 4 knights on a chessboard so each is protected but can't capture any other.
A classic problem requiring creative spatial reasoning. These puzzles stimulate strategic thinking, pattern recognition, showcasing the elegance of mathematical reasoning in games, how our minds grapple with complex constraints.
Okay, shifting to the rapidly evolving world of artificial intelligence. An MIT study suggests AI tools like ChatGPT might be impacting critical thinking skills.
That's a significant concern raised by Al Jazeera. Over-reliance on AI chatbots for cognitive tasks could potentially diminish our innate abilities to analyze, synthesize, evaluate information independently, a warning sign we need to heed.
Safeguarding human critical thinking seems vital as AI becomes more pervasive.
And there was that related concern when AI chatbots were seen communicating in an unintelligible language at a hackathon. Some people found that alarming.
Right, like they were developing autonomy.
Popular Mechanics reported on it, but experts quickly clarified. It's actually a normal part of AI optimizing communication between programs, creating a highly efficient shorthand for internal processes in neural networks.
So it's about efficiency, not secret plots.
Exactly. It's a testament to the AI's learning capabilities, allowing incredible speed, but it simultaneously emphasizes the paramount need for diligence in design and robust control protocols. We need oversight. It's a fascinating glimpse into how AI thinks internally.
But the ethical questions around AI persist, especially in academia. Hidden AI prompts found in academic papers.
Yes, sparking considerable concern about research integrity, according to the Japan Times. It highlights significant flaws in academic publishing and raises serious questions about the credibility of research outcomes, puts the onus on publishers and researchers to ensure transparency.
Despite these concerns and debates, the European Union is pushing ahead with its AI legislation.
They've confirmed they'll proceed with the scheduled rollout, even with opposition from over 100 tech companies arguing the rules are too restrictive.
So the EU is maintaining its timeline for these landmark AI rules.
Yes, TechCrunch reported they're underscoring a commitment to proactive regulation, prioritizing public safety and ethical considerations in this rapidly advancing space.
Here's where it gets truly captivating, though. How these profound insights into the mind and technology intertwine with the deeply human stories of tragedy, cultural milestones, and the universal appeal of sports.
It's a reminder that amidst all the complex global dynamics, the human experience remains at the core. Let's turn our attention now to some truly poignant human interest stories, starting with a tragic loss that really reverberated through the sports world.
You mean the death of Diogo Jota?
Yes, the Liverpool FC soccer star, aged just 28, and his brother Andre Silva, 25. They tragically died in a car crash in Spain, the country in southwestern Europe. Devastating news reported everywhere. NYT, BBC, Al Jazeera, Reuters, CNN, The Athletic.
Just awful. The outpouring of grief was immense, wasn't it? Especially from Liverpool fans at Anfield, their stadium in England.
Huge outpouring. Emotional tributes paid there. Liverpool manager Arne Slot remembered Jota as a friend to everyone, highlighting his impact on and off the pitch.
Their bodies were returned to Portugal, their hometown, for a wake.
Yes. It's a truly heartbreaking loss. You can still find compilations of Jota's best Premier League goals online, a way for fans to remember his incredible talent.
And in the world of entertainment, we also lost actor Michael Madsen.
Known for those iconic roles in Tarantino films like Reservoir Dogs and Kill Bill. He passed away at 67. Tributes pouring in, remembering his memorable, often intense performances. A truly unique character actor.
Sadly, there have been other tragic accidents recently, too. Caitlyn Jenner's manager, Sophia Hutchins,
aged just 29, tragically died in an ATV accident.
and a Labour peer in the UK, a member of the House of Lords, passed away while swimming.
Yes, reported by the BBC. And off the coast of Indonesia, the Southeast Asian nation, a ferry sank.
At least 5 people died, 29 missing after a ferry carrying 65 sank on its way to Bali, the popular Indonesian island province. Ongoing rescue operations in rough seas.
And a truly disturbing incident in Zambia, the landlocked country in southern Africa. 2 elderly women killed by an elephant.
Yes, 1 British, 1 New Zealander, killed during a walking safari in South Longwa National Park. Safari guides tried to deter the elephant, but couldn't prevent it. RT and the BBC reported it adds to a disturbing trend of such encounters. Raises questions about wildlife tourism safety.
And in the U.S., a pedestrian was struck and killed on I-435 near Gregory Boulevard, a major highway in the Kansas City area.
Okay, from those somber events, let's shift to the vibrant, sometimes controversial world of cultural celebrations and milestones.
Like Cape Verde celebrating 50 years of independence.
Exactly. The island nation off Africa's west coast, celebrating 50 years since independence from Portugal on July 5th, widely regarded as one of West Africa's most stable nations. A real achievement.
And another significant cultural milestone, musical icon Angélique Kidjo receiving a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in Los Angeles.
The first Black African to receive one.
That's right. Celebrating her illustrious career and immense cultural impact, paving the way for more diverse representation. A powerful moment for African artistry globally.
And then there's former President Trump's highly unconventional plan for 2026.
Hosting a UFC championship fight on the White House grounds.
Yes, as part of the America 250 celebrations, marking the 250th anniversary of the U.S., he described it as a centerpiece event, maybe 20,000, 25,000 spectators.
It's certainly unconventional. Sparked both enthusiasm from MMA fans and quite a bit of criticism for, potentially trivializing the White House.
Many comparing it to scenes from the satirical movie Idiocracy.
That comparison has been made, yes. A unique way to mark an anniversary for sure.
There's also controversy around the BBC halting broadcasts of high-risk performances.
Yes, after backlash from airing a set by UK punk rap duo Bob Vylan at Glastonbury Festival in England, they led chants of death to the IDF.
The BBC apologized, acknowledged compliance failures.
They did, and the band apparently had their U.S. visas revoked and were dropped by their talent agency. This whole incident fuels broader debates about free speech, artistic expression, activism versus incitement, a real tightrope for media organizations.
Meanwhile, a more local but still impactful issue in Birmingham, UK, the bin strike.
Ongoing for 6 months now, with no resolution in sight, causing significant disruption and frustration for residents. Shows how labor disputes hit daily life hard.
On inclusivity, there was a discussion about Birken, the famous Berlin nightclub in Germany.
Highlighting that while it's considered physically accessible for wheelchair users, it still faces social barriers. Underscores the need for social inclusion beyond just physical access.
And Akon's futuristic city project in Senegal, West Africa. That's off.
Plans for the $6 billion city abandoned. The artist, now focusing on a more realistic venture, apparently, shows the challenges of ambitious development projects.
On a lighter note for the UK, the public's being asked for suggestions for the new £50 note.
Ideas ranging from British bulldogs to Margaret Thatcher, sparking a fun national debate about cultural icons.
And for celebrity watchers, Katy Perry and Orlando Bloom confirmed their split.
After 6-year engagement, yes.
Okay, finally, let's turn to the latest in global sports highlights and challenges.
Beyond the Diogo Jota tragedy, new managers are making their mark like Simone Inzaghi, whose Al Hilal side stunned Bayern Munich at the Club World Cup. England's women's football manager Serena Wegman continues adapting her strategies for success. And Athletic Bilbao forward Inaki Williams signed an incredible 10-year deal, committing to the club despite Barcelona's interest. Remarkable loyalty in modern football.
In cricket, England's facing a challenge after losing top wickets, following a remarkable 269 runs scored by Indian cricketer Shubman Gill. Incredible individual feats there.
On the tennis courts at Wimbledon in London, British player Jack Draper faced another tough loss. Emma Raducanu faces the challenge of bridging the gap to world number 1 Sabalenka. And American player Ben Shelton expressed frustration as play was suspended when he was serving for the match. Shows how quickly fortunes change in pro sports.
In Formula One,
Russell expressing commitment to his team. Sainz's performance helping raise Alex Albon's image. Lewis Hamilton setting the pace from Lando Norris at Silverstone Circuit in England. Ongoing rivalries and team dynamics.
in U.S. sports management, Omar Khan's contract extension signifies stability for the Pittsburgh Steelers football team, including coach Mike Tomlin. A positive outlook there.
And for Euro 2025 debutantes, Wales, the country that's part of the UK, lines up against the Netherlands, uniting for their major tournament debut.
Finally, that intersection of sports and global issues. Mexican boxing star Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. arrested by U.S. immigration.
Yes, by ICE for illegal entry and providing false information. He faces deportation to Mexico for organized crime charges. Highlights how immigration issues and legal challenges impact even high-profile public figures. #outro.
So what does this all actually mean for you? We've journeyed through that intricate dance of global diplomacy, high-stakes calls, freezes.
We've explored the seismic economic currents shaping daily life, from tariffs to remittances.
And even dove into astonishing new insights about the universe and our own mind's distant exoplanets, the mechanics of perception.
And through it all, we've touched on moments of profound tragedy, celebrated remarkable human achievements, and found some lighter notes in culture and sports.
And what truly stands out is that constant, often unexpected interplay between these seemingly disparate events, doesn't it?
Absolutely. A political decision in Washington affects a faraway economy. Tech advancements impact public health, even critical thinking. Our reception of time shapes how we react to the world.
There are always multiple perspectives.
And connecting these dots offers a richer, more informed, ultimately more empowering understanding of the forces shaping our world. It's about seeing the threads that connect everything.
Indeed, as global powers continue to realign, as economic forces shift beneath our feet, and as our own understanding of real time is revealed to be far more complex than we ever thought, it raises a provocative question, really. How much of what we experience as the news is truly immediate?
And what does that mean for how we process, react to, and even influence the world unfolding around us?
Perhaps the deeper truth is in the connections we uncover, not just the headlines themselves.
We really encourage you to keep digging, keep questioning, and keep connecting the dots in your own understanding of the world.
Because the deepest insights often emerge when you look beyond the surface. Join us next time for another deep dive.